On New Year's Eve, Emily took our daughter Zoe to spend the night with her so-called white moonlight Ryan Kim. The three of them had dinner together, took a photo in front of the fireworks, and posted it on social media like they were a picture-perfect family. The likes and comments rolled in. Someone even joked, "Weird, why isn't James Walker saying anything this year? Usually, he's blowing up her phone by now." Emily brushed it off and said she'd call me later. But midnight passed and she still hadn't called. Maybe she was waiting for me to ask her to come home again. She didn't know I'd already boarded the train. From now on, no one would be reminding her to come home. That morning, she came downstairs like usual, not even noticing I was packing my suitcase. She casually said, "I'm heading to the old house to pick up Zoe. We're going to Ryan's place for New Year's. You don't have to wait for us to eat." That indifferent, rehearsed tone was all too familiar. 2 years ago, I might have reacted. I would have made a scene, accused her of abandoning me on a night that's supposed to be about family. But not this year. Maybe because I knew I was finally leaving, I didn't even flinch. "Okay," I said without looking up. She hesitated for a second, surprised by my calm, but said nothing more and left. The sound of the door clicking shut wasn't loud, but it still made me pause. A week earlier, I'd seen Ryan's latest social media post was prepping for the holiday with decorations and cheesy selfies in front of the window. The comments under it were mostly Emily's friends gushing about how sweet it was that she'd be spending the holiday with him again. One even wrote, "Emily is so good to you, Ryan." Emily liked the post. Of course she did. It wasn't the first time she'd ditched me and Zoe to celebrate with him. This year made it 3. I didn't even bother to be mad anymore. Ryan Kim was her white moonlight, the unreachable perfection she romanticized. Even though she married me, even though we went from classmates to husband and wife, I was always just the placeholder. Ever since Ryan came back to the country, Emily changed. I used to argue with her every year when she took Zoe to Ryan's. This time, I didn't say a word. I just left a divorce agreement on the table and booked a train ticket. I figured this time, it was really over. The train left at 7 p.m. I was staring at the old family photo, wondering if I should take it with me, when my phone rang. It was Zoe. She's 5 now. I answered the video call, and her little face popped up on screen, framed by the back seat of Emily's car. Her brows furrowed as she stared at me. "Dad, are you mad again?" I froze. Before I could say anything, she added, "Is it 'cause we're spending New Year's with Uncle Ryan? I already told you, he's always alone on holidays. You have people all the time." Her words echoed from years ago. The same excuse Emily used, the same logic Zoe had repeated like it was fact. That first year, I lost it. We fought. I wanted my family together, and they made me feel like I was the selfish one. Emily didn't even flinch. Zoe stood by her side like I was some unreasonable stranger. I wanted to tell Zoe that I wasn't angry anymore, that her mom could spend every holiday with Ryan if she wanted. "Zoe, I'm not mad," I said quietly. "If it makes you happy, he can celebrate with you every year." She blinked. "You always say the opposite of what you mean." She didn't believe me. "Not really." Before I could say more, the camera shifted and landed on Emily. She was behind the wheel, her face sharp under the dim car light. "Is there something you need?" she asked coldly. I shook my head. "No," she hesitated like she wanted to say something, but the light turned green and she drove off. I hung up. I didn't take the photo with me. I packed my last things, left the keys by the door, and dragged my single suitcase downstairs. 6 years in this city and all I had fit in one 26-inch case. The cab driver chatted as we waited in traffic. "Going home for the new year?" I said yes. "Hope it's not too far," he joked, "or you'll miss dinner." I smiled and lied it was the only ticket I could get. But the truth was I hadn't been home since I married Emily. At first, it was because Zoe was too young. Then, year after year, she and Emily went to Ryan's place instead. I thought maybe this year would be different. It wasn't. Ryan's post confirmed it. So I stopped waiting. The driver dropped me at the station at 6:30. I checked in, boarded, and watched the city lights flicker past. Fireworks went off in the distance. They were beautiful in a detached sort of way. I used to love this city. Used to love Emily. When we first got married, when Zoe was born, things felt whole. But it didn't take long for things to shift. The Liu family, Emily's family, wanted to raise Zoe at their place. I had to call ahead every time I wanted to see my own daughter. The house I built became just another shell. Our conversations died. We slept in the same bed, but we stopped dreaming the same dreams. Zoe always seemed polite but distant, like she didn't really see me as her dad. At first, I blamed our lack of time together. But then I saw how easily she bonded with Ryan, how naturally they laughed and played, and I realized some connections just don't depend on blood. People assume love and loyalty come with titles like husband or father. But they don't. I saw Emily's New Year's post a few minutes ago. Same setup as always. Fireworks, matching smiles, cozy dinner. Emily even smiled in that one rare for her. Zoe looked adorable. Ryan stood tall and confident. It was a perfect photo. The last one I took with them was on Zoe's birthday a year ago. I was the only one smiling in it. Emily and Zoe said they don't like to smile. Back then, I believed them. Now, I wonder if it was just because I was in the photo. I almost tapped like on Emily's post but paused. The comments underneath were already rolling in. Some people really thought they were a real family of three. Someone asked, "Didn't James say anything?" Another joked, "Weird, he hasn't called yet." Emily replied, "He'll call later." I guess she really thought I'd still call. Like clockwork. Even Zoe expected it. She said I always call to tell them to come home. This year, I didn't. And I won't. I closed the app. The train rattled on, steady and quiet. I thought about how long I'd chased Emily, from high school to college. I used to think she was the sun. Untouchable. Even after Ryan left for overseas, I never thought I had a chance until the day she turned around and smiled at me like I was more than background noise. Half a year after Ryan left, she was mine. People thought she was settling. Said she must have been temporarily blind. I didn't care. I married the girl of my dreams. But reality is cruel. When Ryan came back, it was like I'd been holding a place for him. Like the story just hit, resume. I was the filler chapter. And now, that chapter is over. Midnight hit. Fireworks lit up the night. My phone vibrated. It was Emily. That surprised me. For the past 2 years, this exact hour belonged to Ryan and Zoe. They'd be setting off sparklers, eating sweets, laughing. She never had time to care about me. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello." At first, all I heard was breathing. Then she whispered, "Are you asleep?" Her tone was soft, too soft. I lowered my voice. "No." "What's up?" Silence stretched. Then she asked, "It's midnight. Why didn't you call me?" I almost laughed. "Didn't want to ruin your mood." That was the truth. She didn't respond for a while. I didn't feel like wasting my breath anymore. "If that's all, I'll hang up." "Wait," she said, "Zoe wants to say Happy New Year." Of course. Always through Zoe. Emily never says what she really wants. I said thank you. Wished her the same. Her signal crackled, cutting in and out. I was about to hang up when she suddenly called my name. James, when you come back from your dad's, let's take Zoe to the amusement park, okay? The amusement park. That old promise. I wanted to do that years ago to bond with Zoe. Emily said she was too busy. Zoe said it was childish. But months later, I saw them at that exact park with Ryan. I looked out the train window. No need, I said. She didn't hear me. Ryan's voice came through the phone. Emily, come on, Zoe wants to set off fireworks. I knew that voice too well. Was that James on the phone? Ryan asked. Tell him to come home. He must be worried. Zoe wanted egg custard tomorrow, he added casually, his voice syrupy and smug. I hung up. There was no point in listening anymore. She'd figure out what I meant when she got home and saw the empty house. But a small part of me still wondered, what will she feel when she sees I'm gone? Annoyance? Regret? Or nothing at all? I guess I'll find out soon enough. I saw her calls pile up that night, 21 missed calls, all from Emily, and I didn't answer a single one. I knew exactly what she'd see when she walked through the door. No suitcase. No coat by the hook. No shoes at the entrance. No me. Just silence and a divorce agreement with her name on it, signed and left face up on the coffee table. When I finally called back the next morning, she picked up within a second. Her voice was rough, maybe from crying, maybe from yelling at someone, I didn't care. James, where the hell are you? I leaned back on the porch at my dad's place and looked out at the familiar stretch of road I used to bike down as a kid. I went home, I said simply. When are you coming back? She asked. That's what threw me. Like none of this had happened. Like we were still playing house. I'm not, I told her. Emily, I'm not coming back. I left you the papers. Sign them. Let's end this clean. She didn't speak for a second, and I could hear her breathing unevenly like she was trying to process it. And what? James, what the hell are you talking about? We're fine. That word fine tasted like rust in my mouth. She really believed that? I sighed, long and bitter. Emily, I said quietly, when was the last time we were fine? She went quiet again. I could practically hear her mind flipping through memories, probably pulling up the ones where we smiled for cameras or made small talk at family dinners. The ones where we played pretend. Why? She finally asked. Why now? And for once, I told the truth. Because I'm tired. Because I don't want to be in a marriage where I'm always the afterthought. Because I don't care about you and Ryan Kim and your perfect little fireworks pictures anymore. I just want out. She cut in sharply, voice shaking, I've told you 100 times, there's nothing between Ryan and me. I don't care, I said. I'm not asking anymore. There was a long pause, and I could almost picture her sitting alone in the house, staring at the paper I left behind, still trying to convince herself this was temporary. I told her not to call me until she signed the papers, then hung up. I couldn't sleep after that. Got out of bed and wandered into the kitchen, only to find my dad still awake, quietly chopping scallions and boiling noodles. You're up late, I said. He glanced at me over his shoulder. Made you some egg noodles. You used to love them. He placed a bowl in front of me with that same quiet care he always had, and I sat down, suddenly feeling like I was 10 years old again. The steam blurred my vision, or maybe that was just everything finally catching up to me. My dad had always told me not to marry someone who looked down on me. Not because of pride, but because love shouldn't feel like you're begging. I didn't listen. I chased after Emily like a moth to a damn flame, thinking I'd be the one to change her heart. But hearts don't change. Not really. The next morning, my dad opened his little street store while I slept in. The sun was already shining by the time I stepped outside. The 5th day of the new year, and the town looked like something out of a vintage postcard, sunlight spilling over cobblestone roads, faint chatter from open windows, kids running around in jackets too big for them. I took a deep breath, felt something settle in my chest for the first time in years. "Dad," I called, walking toward the shop, but before he could answer, 2 familiar figures turned around. Zoe saw me first. "Daddy," she screamed, and came running full force. I was frozen in place, arms instinctively catching her as she threw herself at me. Her tiny arms wrapped tight around my neck, and I stared at her in shock. Emily followed, a faint smile on her lips like none of this was strange. "James." I didn't answer. My heartbeat was hammering, but not with joy, more like confusion and dread. What were they doing here? "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Emily's hand gently squeezed mine. "I'm sorry, James. There were too many guests at home. I couldn't leave earlier." And just like that, my dad appeared with a fruit plate like nothing was wrong. "Come, come," he said to them like he'd already known they were coming. I don't know how she managed to charm my dad in one night, but there he was, offering her snacks and smiling like he'd forgotten how cold she'd always been to me. "Zoe, come give Grandpa a hug," he beamed. "Here's your New Year red envelope." Zoe giggled sweetly and ran into his arms, all sunshine and innocence. Watching them made me sick and warm at the same time. Emily had brought her A-game, playing the devoted wife and doting mom like we hadn't spent the past few years in a silent, slow-motion breakup. I knew why she came. She thought I was just throwing a fit. She figured if she brought Zoe and smiled at my dad, I'd fold. But the truth is, I wasn't angry anymore. I was empty. And that's worse. That night, she stood behind me while I boiled water. "James," she said gently, "I drove 5 hours last night. I'm exhausted." My dad overheard and immediately rushed in to suggest they both rest at the house. Emily looked like she wanted to collapse into my arms, but I kept my distance. I took them home because I didn't want to argue in front of my dad, but my silence wasn't forgiveness. It was indifference. After we got inside, I asked Zoe to go to her room, and I turned to Emily. "What do you want, Emily?" She stared at me like I was the crazy one. "What do you mean? You always said Zoe should meet her grandfather." "I'm doing what you wanted." I laughed. A hollow, bitter laugh. "I said that for years. You ignored me until now." Her lips tightened. "James, don't look at me like that. I'm serious." But I couldn't see her sincerity anymore. It was like a fog I'd walked through for years had finally lifted. For the next 2 days, Emily played the role of perfect daughter-in-law, helping my dad in the kitchen, taking walks around town, always sticking close to me but never quite bridging the distance. Zoe warmed up to my dad, and it made him happier than I'd seen him in years. But I noticed something else too. Whenever Zoe was out of earshot, Emily looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't. On the 3rd night, I overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. "Zoe, throwing a tantrum, I want to go home. I don't like it here. Grandpa's toys are boring. I miss Uncle Ryan. I want to go to the amusement park with him." Emily hushed her quickly, whispering, "Just wait. When your dad isn't upset anymore, we'll go home. Just behave, okay?" Zoe grumbled, but agreed. And I on the other side of the wall stood frozen. So that was it. I wasn't a father. I was an obstacle. I didn't confront them. Not yet. My dad suggested we go for a walk around town. "Take Ryan and Zoe," he said, using her old nickname like he still believed this was salvageable. Emily smiled brightly at the suggestion. "Zoe, we're going to see where your dad grew up," she chirped. We walked across the cobbled roads, the air crisp and sweet. Zoe darted ahead like she didn't just say she hated it here. Emily tried to make conversation. James, you never told me about your childhood. I stared at her. I did. You just never listened. She looked down at her feet. Let's come here every year, she said softly, like that would fix anything. I didn't respond. And just then, Zoe's voice rang out from up ahead. Uncle Ryan. My blood went cold. I looked up and there he was, Ryan Kim, arms wide open like he belonged here. Like this wasn't my town, my family, my walk. Zoe ran to him instinctively. Emily's expression changed instantly. She looked at me, waiting for a reaction. I gave her none. Ryan smiled like this was all part of his plan. Mr. Walker, he said smoothly, what a coincidence. He mentioned that New Year's Eve phone call like it was an inside joke. Sorry for interrupting again, he added, voice full of fake humility. Zoe clung to his side, and he suggested they take a group photo on the bridge. Emily, take one of me and Zoe, he said. Then he turned to me. Would you mind snapping a pic of all three of us? Emily looked like she wanted to object, but I was already nodding. Sure. I took the photo. But right before I clicked, Emily turned and said, wait. James, let's take a photo as a family. No, I said flatly. I don't like photos. Her face fell, and something behind her eyes cracked. But she didn't argue. That night, she knocked on my door. James, I didn't invite him here. I swear. I looked her dead in the eyes. I know. I called him. Her face twisted in confusion. Why would you? So you could see exactly what I've been seeing all these years, I interrupted. So you could feel what it's like to be the outsider in your own life. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. You want everything, Emily. Ryan, Zoe, me. But you can't have it all. Not anymore. I turned away. She said nothing. She just stood there. Quiet. And that's how I knew part 3 was coming, because she wasn't ready to walk away, but I already had. The next morning, I barely made it downstairs before my dad stopped me with a hopeful look on his face and a subtle nudge toward Emily and Zoe, who were already sitting at the breakfast table like they belonged. My dad tried to act casual, but I could see it written all over him, wanted things to go back to the way they were, or maybe the way he imagined they had been. Emily passed me a bowl of soup without a word, just a small smile, like yesterday never happened. Zoe looked up at me with innocent eyes, as if she didn't tell her mom last night that she missed Ryan and wanted to go back. I took the soup, said nothing, and sat down. My dad, oblivious to the tension, started chatting about taking a walk to the temple later or visiting the lakeside town nearby. It'll be good for Zoe, he said. Emily jumped in immediately. That sounds lovely. Right, Zoe? Zoe nodded, barely glancing at me. And I knew right then I was just an extra in my own house again. Later that day, Emily cornered me in the hallway while Zoe played with a box of random toys my dad had pulled from who knows where. James, I know you're angry, she began, but I cut her off. You're not here for me. You never were. You brought Zoe because you think she's some kind of leash around my neck. She looked stunned, like she hadn't expected me to say it out loud. That's not true, she whispered, but even she didn't sound convinced. Then what is true, Emily? That I'm supposed to be grateful you finally remembered Zoe has a grandfather? That you suddenly care now that I left? She opened her mouth, then closed it again, and for a moment, I thought she might actually walk away. But she didn't. She stayed. And that was the worst part because it meant she hadn't given up yet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up to get some air and heard voices coming from Zoe's room. Her and Emily. I stopped just outside the door. Mom, when are we going home? Zoe whined. This place is boring. Grandpa's toys are weird. I want to go to the amusement park with Uncle Ryan. Emily sighed. Soon, baby. We'll go home when your dad's not mad anymore. But for now, we need to be good, okay? Do I have to pretend to like it here? Zoe asked. Just a little, Emily said softly. Just for a little longer. I stepped away before they noticed me, but the words stuck like gum on the bottom of my shoe. Pretend to like it here. Pretend to be good. Pretend we're a family. The next morning, my dad insisted we all take a trip through the town's market. Said it'd be good for nostalgia or whatever. Emily agreed again like she was starring in some cheesy redemption arc. Zoe ran ahead while I trailed behind them both, wondering if I was the only one who realized this whole thing was fake. Emily tried to make small talk. James, remember when you used to run across this bridge as a kid? Yeah, I muttered, not in the mood. You never told me about your childhood, she said again, like that would spark some kind of bonding moment. I did, I replied. You just weren't listening. Her smile faltered. Then she said the most ironic thing I'd heard in years. Let's come back here every year. As a family. I didn't answer. And I didn't have to, because that's when we heard Zoe scream from up ahead. Uncle Ryan. I didn't even look up. I already knew. Ryan Kim. Like he'd been summoned by some invisible scriptwriter desperate for a plot twist. There he was, standing at the edge of the market with his designer jacket and that smug, too handsome face. Zoe ran to him like she'd seen Santa. Emily froze. Her eyes darted to me, panic flickering just below the surface. Ryan acted cool, of course. What a coincidence, he said, that fake smile glued to his face. Didn't expect to run into you guys here. Yeah. In a town with a population smaller than a high school gym. Sure. Total coincidence. He turned to Zoe, lifted her in his arms, and spun her around like he was her dad. I felt something inside me twist, but I kept it buried. Ryan suggested they take a photo him, Zoe, and Emily on the bridge. James, he added with that extra touch of fake humility, would you mind taking the picture? Emily looked like she wanted to vanish. I didn't even blink. Sure, I said. I held the phone. Focused the lens. And when I looked through the screen, I saw what everyone else probably saw too: a beautiful woman, a sweet little girl, and a man who looked like he belonged. Just before I snapped it, Emily turned to me. Wait, she said suddenly. James, let's take one as a family too. I handed the phone back. I don't like photos. The air shifted. Ryan smirked. Emily's face dropped. That night, she came to my room again. No knocking. No permission. I didn't ask Ryan to come, she said. You really think I don't know that? I replied, staring her down. You think I don't know how carefully you planned this trip to make me reconsider? Zoe needs both her parents, she argued. Zoe needs a stable home. She already has one, I shot back. With Ryan. Clearly, that's who she wants. Clearly, that's who you want too. Her voice cracked. I never wanted to divorce you, James. Well, I do, I said coldly. And I'm done waiting for you to admit that this thing between you and Ryan isn't innocent. She looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Or maybe she was. And maybe that's why neither of us saw part 4 coming, because sometimes, you live with someone so long, you forget they're capable of burning everything down just to keep pretending the house is still standing. The next morning, the air in the house was thick with something neither of us dared to name, like the silence after a storm that didn't quite destroy everything, but made sure nothing would ever be the same. I sat at the kitchen table, watching Zoe eat a bowl of instant oatmeal with zero interest, her feet swinging off the edge of the chair while Emily stood by the window pretending to check the weather. My dad had gone out early to pick up supplies for the shop, still unaware that the family under his roof was a glass sculpture mid-crack. I didn't say anything until Emily broke the silence. "Zoe wants to go play near the lake," she said. She asked if Ryan could take her. The audacity didn't even sting anymore. "Let him," I said, sipping my coffee. She hesitated, then added, "She wants me to go too." "Go," I replied flatly, not even looking up. Emily didn't argue. She got Zoe ready, and 10 minutes later, the front door closed behind them. I didn't follow. I didn't peek. I didn't care. At least, that's what I told myself. I stayed inside, letting the quiet settle like dust on my skin. I thought they'd be gone for hours, maybe all day, lost in that perfect little world Ryan always seemed so eager to create. But not even an hour had passed before I heard the sound of the front gate slam open and Zoe's sobs breaking the peace like shattered glass. I opened the door to see her red-faced and wailing, Emily storming in right behind her, face pale and eyes blazing. "What happened?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "Don't talk to me." Zoe shrieked and shoved my hand away. I was stunned. "Zoe!" Emily barked, grabbing her arm. "That's enough." The way she scolded her was sharp, unfiltered, almost panicked. I could tell something real had snapped out there. Something that even Ryan's polished presence couldn't smooth over. I turned to Emily. "What the hell happened?" She didn't speak. She was still breathing heavy, her chest rising and falling like she'd just run a marathon. I turned to Zoe, but she just crossed her arms and looked away, muttering, "I hate you. I don't want you. I like Uncle Ryan more. He's better than you." Her words hit like a slap I never saw coming. For a second, I was frozen. I wasn't even angry, I was just numb. Not because I didn't expect it, but because hearing it aloud finally made it real. I crouched to her level, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, "You know what, Zoe? I don't like you much either." Emily gasped. Zoe's face crumpled, stunned by my bluntness. I stood up, walked away, and didn't look back. I heard Emily whisper something sharp under her breath as she pulled Zoe into the guest room. The door slammed. And still, I felt nothing. It wasn't until later, when Emily came out alone, her eyes red, her voice soft but controlled, that I finally looked her way. "She doesn't mean it," she said. "She's just upset. Confused." "No, she meant it," I replied. "And she's not confused. She's learned exactly how to play both sides." "James, what do you want me to say, Emily? That I'll keep pretending this is normal? That I'll keep fighting for a kid who only sees me as a nuisance and a woman who only turns to me when everything else falls apart?" Her hands trembled. "I brought her here because I thought we could fix this. You brought her here to control the narrative. Just like you always do. You're her father. Am I?" I shot back. Because from where I'm standing, Ryan's got that roll down better than I ever did. And honestly, I think she'd be happier if he were. Emily's jaw clenched. "Don't say that." "Why not? Isn't that what you've always wanted? For Ryan to come back and pick up where you two left off? That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is me sitting at home every year while you and our daughter go play pretend family with your ex. We were friends. You were lovers. Don't insult both of us." That shut her up. She looked at me like she didn't even recognize who I was. Maybe I didn't either. "I'm not signing those papers," she said suddenly. "I never agreed to any of this." "You don't have to agree," I told her. "You just have to accept it." "And Zoe? You'll just leave her behind?" I stared out the window. She never saw me as her father. She saw me as the guy who interrupted her time with Uncle Ryan. That's not true. Isn't it? You left her with your family for years, Emily. You made it clear who was allowed access and when. You built a wall between us and called it protection. I had my reasons. Yeah. And I had my limits. She didn't say anything after that. The rest of the day was a blur. My dad came home and sensed the tension, but didn't ask. Emily stayed in her room with Zoe. I stayed outside. At dinner, we ate in silence. That night, I went to bed alone. Again. But this time, there wasn't even the illusion of a family under the same roof. There was just the truth. Ugly. Cold. And completely irreversible. I didn't know it yet, but that fight had triggered something bigger. Something Zoe wasn't done processing. Something Emily couldn't fix with another apology. And something Ryan, well, he was about to be shoved out of the story for good. Part 5 was already writing itself. The next morning started too quietly, the kind of quiet that makes your skin itch because you know something's brewing underneath it, and you're just waiting for the explosion to hit. I sat on the front porch drinking cheap coffee that had long gone cold, listening to the wind drag dust across the concrete, when Zoe burst through the screen door, cheeks puffed with defiance and fists clenched like a kid preparing for war. I want to go to the other side of town, she demanded. I want to play somewhere fun. I didn't even flinch. Go ask your mom. She narrowed her eyes. I want Uncle Ryan to take me. Her words landed like darts, not because they were new, but because they kept hitting the same wound that never healed. You do whatever you want, Zoe. You always do. She turned on her heel and bolted before Emily could even respond. From the edge of my vision, I saw Ryan waiting outside the gate, pretending to check his phone, acting like he just happened to be strolling by. It was pathetic. Emily followed behind Zoe, barely sparing me a glance, and for once, I didn't care. I didn't ask where they were going or when they'd be back. I just shut the door behind them and let the silence wrap around me like armor. I thought, maybe this time, they'd all disappear for good. But barely an hour later, I heard the gate slam open again and the sound of Zoe's furious crying echoing across the yard. She stumbled through the door, red-faced, snotty, screaming like someone had kicked her puppy. Emily trailed behind her, looking wrecked in a way that wasn't performative, her jaw tight and her hands trembling. What now? I asked, already tired. Don't ask me anything. Zoe shouted, pushing past me like I was nothing. I don't want you. I want Uncle Ryan. He's better than you. Her voice cracked as she yelled it, but her words were sharp and clean, like she'd been practicing them. I stood still, staring at her as she stomped up the stairs, and Emily froze mid-step, eyes wide, body tense like she was waiting for me to lose it. But I didn't. I just looked at her and said, "You gonna tell me what happened or should I guess?" Emily exhaled slowly, pain flickering across her face. He crossed the line. Which line? I asked, my voice deadpan. There were so many. I told him to back off, she said, quieter now. He offered me a bite of some buckwheat cake. Zoe thought it was sweet. I saw his fingerprints on everything. The way he looked at me, the way he talked to Zoe. Like he already lived in our house. He's been living in your heart for years, Emily. You just finally noticed. Her face crumbled. I told him to leave us alone. That he was interfering. That he was annoying. Good for you, I said, but the words felt dry. And Zoe? Emily rubbed her temple. She lost it. Said I was mean to him. Said I ruined everything. Started screaming at me in the middle of the sidewalk like I was the villain in some cartoon. I laughed. I didn't mean to, but I couldn't help it. Welcome to my world. Emily looked like she wanted to cry, but held it in. She doesn't understand, James. She thinks Ryan's the good guy. He plays the hero and disappears when things get hard. He's never had to do any of the real work. You raised her that way, I said. You made him the center of her universe and left me on the outside. This is just the fallout. She didn't respond. I turned away, but before I could take another step, Zoe came storming down the stairs, her little fists balled up again. You, she shouted at me. It's all your fault. If you didn't make Mom sad all the time, we could have had fun. I stared at her, at the tiny version of Emily that stood in front of me, all fire and coldness and entitlement, and I felt something in me cave in on itself. Zoe, I said slowly, crouching to her level, I've been trying to love you for years. I've shown up. I've tried. But you made your choice a long time ago. I didn't choose anything, she screamed. I'm just a kid. Yeah, and I'm done trying to be a father to someone who doesn't want one. Her face crumpled. Emily's mouth opened to stop me, but I was already standing up. Go ahead, I told her. Take her back. Go home. Back to your perfect world with Ryan. Just do me one favor, sign the damn papers. Emily didn't move. Zoe burst into tears, ran to her mom, and clung to her waist like I was the monster in her bedtime story. And maybe I was. Maybe I'd become the villain she always saw me as. But at least now, I wasn't lying to myself anymore. Emily looked at me with hollow eyes, then turned and walked out the door with Zoe sobbing in her arms. They didn't look back. My dad came out of the kitchen moments later, holding a red envelope he'd meant to give to Zoe. Where'd they go? He asked, confused. Back to the city, I said. They won't be coming back. He didn't push. He just nodded and put the envelope back on the shelf. That night, I lay in bed with the lights off, staring at the ceiling, and I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't break anything. I just breathed. Slowly. Quietly. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Part 6 was already on the horizon, and it wasn't about revenge or regret anymore. It was about finally choosing myself. Emily and Zoe left on the 8th day of the new year, their suitcases packed without ceremony, no lingering looks, no dramatic goodbyes, just a muted, "We'll be going now," from Emily and a sulking Zoe hiding behind the window of the back seat, refusing to make eye contact like she was still waiting for me to chase after her and say something fatherly, but I didn't move an inch, didn't wave, didn't flinch, because I meant what I said. There was nothing left to fight for, and the most I could offer them now was space to build whatever fantasy they wanted without me standing in the way, and my dad, who still didn't know the full story, waved at them warmly and told Emily and Zoe to come visit more often, oblivious to the wreckage they left behind, and she, being the actress she always was, smiled politely, promised she would, then avoided looking at me for the rest of the goodbye as if she already knew her presence in this house had expired the moment she chose to play family with another man. And Zoe, sitting in the back, clutched a bag of snacks my dad had given her, pouting like I was the villain for not coming after her, but the truth was, I had no energy left to chase people who only showed up to remind me I was never really wanted, so I simply told Emily to remember to sign the divorce papers, and that this was the last thing I'd ask of her, just one final closure before we both moved on with our lives. And though she didn't say anything, I saw the redness in her eyes when she turned away, like she knew she'd finally lost the one person who used to love her without conditions, and a month later, it was official, divorce granted, clean, quiet, and for the first time in 6 years, I wrote my name on a document that didn't feel like I was begging someone to stay, and half a year after that, my dad finally found out the truth, sat me down in the back of his shop with a furrowed brow and asked, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" But I didn't know how to explain that I had spent so long hiding my own misery that I stopped knowing how to share it, so I just said, I didn't love her anymore, and he nodded like he understood more than he was letting on, didn't push, didn't scold, just quietly started preparing more food in the mornings, started spending more time with me, like he figured I needed his presence more than his words, and oddly enough, I did, because despite everything, Life had become manageable again, simpler, like I could breathe without tiptoeing around someone else's moods or wondering if I was being compared to a ghost named Ryan. And even though I expected Emily to marry him right after the divorce, she didn't. Ryan disappeared again, went abroad, maybe ran away when he realized being the third party wasn't as glamorous when the real work began, and Emily, in some strange twist of fate, never posted about him again. In fact, she deleted all her old social media photos of their New Year celebrations, and one day, I heard from someone that she had hung up an old picture of me, her, and Zoe in their home, the one from Zoe's birthday where I was the only one smiling and they both looked like they were being held hostage, and people who used to mock me for being the side character in my own marriage suddenly started messaging me again, some pretending they always supported me, others asking if we'd get back together, but I ignored them all, and eventually I posted one pinned message on my feed, "Do not disturb. Divorced," and that shut them up quick. Though I heard whispers that Zoe had taken it the hardest. At first she didn't even understand what divorce meant, just kept asking Emily why I hadn't come back yet, when I'd show up for the holidays, and when Emily finally told her the truth, that I wouldn't be coming back, she cried for days, threw fits, demanded to see me, but I never responded, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I needed her to understand that love, once burned through enough times, turns to ash, and ash doesn't come back to life just because someone decides they miss the warmth. And eventually, Emily started bringing Zoe back to the town during winter and summer breaks, maybe to see my dad, maybe to keep some small connection alive, but I was never home during those visits, always traveling, always conveniently away. And I heard from my dad that Zoe started to look forward to those visits the way I used to look forward to New Year's, full of hope that this time would be different, but I wasn't the man she remembered, and she wasn't the girl I once thought I could love like my own. And sometimes my dad would try to convince me to reach out, to let things go, to at least talk to her again, but I'd just shake my head and say, some goodbyes are permanent, because the truth is, I stopped waiting for closure the day I realized I was the only one who ever stayed, and now that I was finally gone, I had no intention of reopening wounds just to play nice. And maybe one day, when she's older, Zoe will understand that love isn't always enough to keep people around, especially when loyalty is one-sided, and maybe Emily will look back and realize that chasing ghosts cost her everything that was real, but by then I'll be far away, living a life I don't have to explain or defend, waking up every day without wondering who I have to compete with just to be enough. And that more than anything just the peace I always deserved, and the only thing I'd never trade again, not even for the illusion of a family.